Okay, everybody, we are live. We're going to wait for everybody to jump on in before we really get cooking. But I'm Keith Niebuhr with Gators Online. That is Nick Delatorre with Gators Online. He's our senior extraordinaire / beat reporter. I mean, he does it all. He does everything. And both of us are sort of coming off. Nick was obviously really ill. I was just minor. I had a minor illness, but we're both not feeling we haven't been feeling ourselves. But this is the Gators Online show. We're trying to do it every Sunday, especially during football season. We're going to first recap Florida's impressive 22-7 win over Charlotte from Saturday night. Not that impressive. And then we're going to bring on a guy that really knows his statistics, and we think you're really going to like that. And it's Clark Brooks. He's a college football analyst for On3. On Twitter, he is at SEC_StatCat. And he's going to give us a look at Kentucky and what the Wildcats do. And you want to know because Florida's getting ready to play at Lexington next weekend. And then if all goes as planned, we're going to have one of the Gators' top commitments on later on in the show. And that is 4-star offensive tackle Fletcher Westphal. And I always joke around, Nick, I kind of crack on writers that say massive offensive lineman commits to Georgia Tech. And I'm like, shouldn't they all be massive? I mean, they're all, I mean, you know what I mean? Like what? But this guy actually is massive. He's 6'8". He's over 300 pounds. Size, I want to say 17 or 18 shoe. He's not Andre the Giant, but he's a big dude. So Fletcher Westphal, 4-star Gators commit, will join us later on in the show. But again, Keith Niebuhr with Gators Online, Nick Delatorre with Gators Online. Nick, that was kind of an uninspiring performance yesterday. Maybe it should have been expected coming off of a huge win over Tennessee at home. It was certainly a letdown, and then some. Just some of your initial takeaways from yesterday's Gator game.
Well, my first one's being my personal takeaway. Shoot, this is my 11th season, and that's only the 4th game I haven't been at in person. I missed the Kentucky game in 13. I missed a loss to Georgia for Dan Mullen for a wedding. I think it was his first Georgia game, maybe. And I missed the Las Vegas Bowl last year with COVID again. So. Luckily we're immune. Hopefully I've gotten my flu out of the way for the season, Keith, and I won't miss another one. But
they don't seem to play. Let me interrupt you. They don't seem to play too well when you're not there, Nick. I don't know.
Well, you know that they're like 20 games over 500 since I've been here covering the team, so they just don't play well with me in Gainesville. Maybe I think one of the things though that I look at and like, listen, this is. If you look up trap game in a dictionary, this is what it would be. You just beat a rival at home who had beaten you last year. A ton of emotion goes into that game. You leave it all on the field. Then you've got your first true road test. And to play a team that's beaten you twice, beaten you 3 out of the last 5 times you've played them. Easy to look ahead of that when you've got a team like Charlotte who has a football coach who was coaching high school football a couple of years ago, and the program is only, I think, a decade old. So, of course, that's not an excuse. It's up to the coaches to get the team ready. Billy Napier, I thought it was weird. He kind of walked around like with some cocky confidence all week, and I thought, listen, when you beat your rivals, you can do that. But then he said, thought the team didn't practice well, and of course, we write that because he said it. And some of the players echoed it. And then he gets to his press conference on Thursday night. And it's, well, I think the media blew that out of proportion. Well, then don't say it. Don't say it in a press conference if you don't want it to be written about. So then I look at that and I'm like, okay, well, maybe it wasn't a bad week of practice. Maybe you weren't overlooking. And then I go back to, listen, this is a young Florida football team that's still learning to win. And that means Billy Napier too. He said he took his foot off the gas. They had an opportunity, Keith, late in the third quarter to go up. I think they were up 26-7 or 24-7 on Tennessee. Had a chance to score again and don't get it done. I think Billy went conservative. I think Florida's still learning how to win, and what comes with that is also learning how to win. I think they probably felt good about themselves last week. If the team was a dog, the dog had rolled over on its back and everyone was scratching its belly, telling it how good of a boy he was all week for beating Tennessee. So I think looking at Florida, it's a young team. They have a small margin of error in any game, whether that's LSU, Georgia, or Charlotte. They have a small margin of error. And if they don't come to play every week, you can get a 22-7 win over a team like Charlotte.
All right, Nick, the game started off pretty fast for Florida. They go right down the field. I think they kicked the field goal. Then they went right down the field again. The defense was on fire.
Yeah.
Charlotte could get nothing going after one quarter.
First quarter was great, Keith. First quarter was great.
Well,
then they had to play the next 3.
It was only 10-0, but you got the feeling that, boy, this is really going to get ugly because Florida already had 10 first downs in the first quarter, so on pace for 40, had 225 yards in the first quarter, and just
Charlotte
having no
30.
problem. Yeah, I mean, if that. And so, I don't know if I'd label it as a trap game. I think more of a letdown game in the sense I never felt like Florida was going to lose. But, second quarter, Florida looked not great. Couldn't get it done in the red zone. Gave up a touchdown. And then lo and behold, Nick, that first drive of the third quarter, Florida fumbles the ball. And Charlotte has the ball inside Florida territory. And if they score a touchdown there, it's 16-14. And listen, man, stranger things have happened at Ben Hill Griffin Stadium, okay? As a little kid, Nick is a little kid. You've seen some. I've seen some as a little kid. I went and saw one of the best Florida teams ever play there, the 1985 squad. They led Rutgers 28-7 in the second half, took the starting quarterback out, put the backup quarterback in. By the time the game was over, they were holding on for dear life and ended up with a tie. A tie against Rutgers ended up keeping Florida from having its first 10-win season. So weird things have happened back there, no doubt. But the defense held up on that drive. Charlotte missed a field goal, and Florida still won fairly comfortably, I guess. But 22-7 overall.
Well, the game was not as close as the score. At no point was I thinking oh man, Florida's in trouble here. It was just that could have been better. You could have gotten it just kept being settled for 3. Settled for 3. Fumbled. But the defense played great, in my opinion.
But Nick, an offense. How do I get this? How do I put this? A defense for Charlotte. Let me get that straight. That really hadn't had great success. Maryland scored 38. Georgia State had a lot of yards on them, I believe. So Florida, after 225 yards in the first quarter, Nick, ended up with only 395 for the game. Didn't even get to 400 yards of offense. 259 passing. Graham Mertz, 28-23, very efficient. Again, in the red zone, or actually, let me get to this. Florida only had 136 yards rushing. Nick, red zone and third down woes were really the issue. Couldn't really get much done in the red zone. Obviously, they only scored 1 touchdown. And on third down, against, again, a far inferior opponent, Florida was 1 of 9 on third downs. And again, the culprit, much like when they struggled on third down against Utah, was offensive line play. I think most people would agree with that. I know everybody talks about the play calling and all that, but, a play call sometimes is about only as good as the guys blocking and tackling and all that stuff. So they just didn't get it done in the red zone and on third down, and a lot of those plays intersected. But it just was an uninspiring performance. So what do we make of this, Nick? Is that game the anomaly, or is the Tennessee game the anomaly, or is it too soon to know?
I don't think either of them are an anomaly. Florida's a good football team, but they're a middle of the road football team, and they're young. Their best players are young. You're going to have to deal with Jordan Castell, who has played more snaps than anyone on defense, take a bad route every once in a while, take a bad angle on a guy. You're going to have stuff like this. Guys are having to learn, like I said, having to learn how to win and what it takes to win. I don't think Tennessee's a very good football team. They certainly aren't the 11th best football team. I wouldn't have them ranked ahead of Florida if I was doing rankings. So I just kind of stayed level, and people thought maybe I was negative after the Tennessee win. I was just I just don't think it was a huge win. You had to beat Tennessee. You had to get that rivalry win. And it was a great win for a bunch of reasons. I just don't think it's you didn't go out and beat USC or Georgia or Florida State in terms of that caliber of team. I just don't think Tennessee is that this year with the quarterback that they have. So then this week, I would say I was more surprised that Florida only scored 22. Thought the offense would look better. I think they tried to push the ball down the field a little bit more. And I thought you needed to do that. Against week 1 against Utah, you couldn't run the ball. So you came out against McNeese and forced that issue. Hey, we're gonna run the ball. We're gonna knock out these kinks. Haven't been able to really push the ball down the field. The offense has been kind of east to west, dink and dunk. Which, listen, if if they're giving you, I put it on our message board, Keith, someone was complaining about it. And I said, listen, unless you're Steph Curry, if the offense is giving you the lane and letting you lay it up, then we don't need to launch it from half court. Take the layups if they're giving them to you. And I think that's what Graham Mertz and Florida's offense has been doing. So it's like, yeah, is Florida pushing the ball down the field? No, but Graham Mertz is completing his layups at like a 75% clip. So no need to start shooting threes if they're giving you layups. So I wasn't surprised that Florida beat Tennessee. You know, we both picked it. Maybe surprised that Florida wasn't a little bit more explosive outside of a couple plays against Charlotte.
All right, let's get to our first guest of the night. We're going to bring him in, Clark Brooks. Clark Brooks, college football analyst, stat wizard for On3. Clark, if I get your Twitter wrong, correct, or excuse me, the app formerly known as Twitter. If I get your handle wrong, please correct me. But at SEC_StatCat.
Yeah, you nailed it. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. All right, so Nick's going to take over this part, but I just general thoughts from me real quick on what you've seen from Florida so far this season. Anything really stick out from a statistics standpoint?
Well, from a statistics standpoint, it's just continuing that busy setup that they like to use. Last year, they were one of the top offenses within the SEC using pre-snap and at-snap motion. Of course, that's just trying to present pre-snap keys and give your quarterback a little bit more of an idea of what the defense is going to throw at you. But of course, using that motion hasn't necessarily generated great returns as of yet. Of course, we need to see a little bit more games to see this year, just to see if it's going to be a boon to the bottom line, because last year it definitely was not. But again, it does help with how much you guys like to use play action. Give the quarterback an idea of where to go with the ball and get defenses a little bit out of position. But yeah, that has been a consistent trait for Florida's offense. And of course, it's the two running backs. Where they're going to trade off game after game, who's going to be the star. But those two guys have been statistically very, very pleasing from where I'm sitting from stable metrics. So stable metrics are things I'd like to say, if you have bad blocking, no matter what scheme you're thrown into, can you be trusted to get yardage? So that's broken tackle rate, yards after contact, erasing contact behind the line of scrimmage and turning that into positive gains. Both things that Etienne and Johnson are pretty good at.
All right, Nick, Nick, why don't you take over here?
Well, we'll get more into Florida probably later in the week, but I want to get a little snapshot of Kentucky. I think really the world of Mark Stoops. I was born in 1988, so it was 31 years before I saw Kentucky beat Florida. Shout out to Dan Mullen. But Mark Stoops has done an amazing job, and Kentucky has to recruit nationally. They have to recruit against Ohio State and Michigan. They have to recruit against a lot of Clemson and Georgia, and it's a tough place to get players. He seems to get his type of player. They have an identity that they've spent a decade building. They're going to be big on either side of the offensive line. They're going to be physical. And listen, unless Will Levis is there, we're probably going to be running the football in the Bluegrass State. Just what have you seen from Kentucky? Listen, they had 3 pay-for-play games in Vanderbilt, so the competition has been what it is. But I always say you beat the teams you're supposed to beat the way you're supposed to beat them. In Kentucky, while they've kind of looked like a mess on offense at times, isn't in close games.
Yeah, I mean, the down-to-down consistency has not been there the first month of the season. Of course, you bring in a big name like Devin Leary, trying to replicate that big 2021 season where he had basically a 30-to-1 interception to touchdown ratio. But I thought he was going to be one of the more accurate quarterbacks in the SEC. That has maintained itself. The problem is he suffers from the worst drop rate in the conference. He's the second most pressured quarterback in the conference. The offensive line, though, it has some fool's gold, and I can explain it here in a little bit, just how they are one of the best units in the SEC at providing rush yards before contact on average, and that does help lead into that potency. And speaking to the potency, Mr. Leary is second in the SEC in explosive pass rate. So that's percentage of passes that gain at least 20 yards or more. So that is definitely something the Cats have in their back corner. And one of the reasons why they've been able to road scent some of these games that have been a little rocky. Look, Eastern Kentucky, a directional school, 15 minutes away from Lexington. They got blown out in week 1 against Cincinnati. they hung around in Lexington, and it was not a pretty performance whatsoever from the Wildcats. So while there is talent there, and there are definitely silver linings when you see those big plays being produced, it's just when you see themselves shoot themselves in the foot. A good example of that was basically the second and third quarters against Vanderbilt, where you had Leary have a batted ball, the next snap, he had his guy stepped on him, and then the very next play, hit and throw interception. So, yes, it does encapsulate how quickly the quarterback or how the environment can fold in on this quarterback and make them susceptible to very, very negative plays. But just because they are so very dangerous with Varian Brown, Dan Key stretching the field, and Leary's ability to put that ball on them deep, it's just, yeah, you would like to see a little bit more consistency based on who they played the first month of the season.
And looking at Kentucky defensively, this is going to be, I'm assuming Kroger Field will be sold out.
Yeah.
They beat Florida 2 years in a row. I was up there 2 years ago, and they rushed the field. They might not even rush the field if they beat Florida this year.
Yeah, they're so used to it, you know?
Yeah.
The novelty's going off at this point.
But defensively, if you look at Florida and who they are, Graham Mertz has been very accurate. He had a bunch of interception issues at Wisconsin, has not been an issue or even really a fear in games for Florida. He's been really good. I think there maybe a couple drops or passes that have gone the wrong way. But Graham has been really good. I think better than what we have expected of him. Florida, like as you came into the room, we were talking about this kind of dink and dunk offense. And listen, I think they're just taking what defenses present. How does Kentucky handle that defensively? Do they have the guys? Because once Florida gets into this SEC slate, I don't know that you can go east and west and dink and dunk on a week-to-week basis, and you're going to have to start pushing the ball down the field.
Well, you hit the nail on the head. The reason why he's not putting the ball in the harm's way and the reason why he's able to see his completions is because he's aiming small and missing small. You're dinking and dunking. You're attacking the flat. You're taking what's there. And defensively, Kentucky's a bend-don't-break defense. That's exactly what they want to present. They want to have a lot of safeties back and rally towards the line of scrimmage once the ball is thrown and keep themselves basically a lot of real estate to play with. So they themselves have not been the best defense at generating pressure because of that style of play. It's inherently conservative. It's inherently more reactive as opposed to a proactive approach trying to get after quarterbacks. But don't kid yourself. Mark Stoops and Brad White are going to try and present a lot of coverage looks and confuse Mertz to try and dump it off in the flat where you think he might have a nice yak opportunity and turn around. Oh, gosh, there's a rallying safety and it's going to be a 2-yard gain. So there's a lot of avenues that they like to present people. And a lot of it is playing with the types of fronts they're able to do with someone like Deion Walker. Deion Walker, he's 6'6", 350 pounds, and they line him up at edge, my friends. He's not just a nose tackle pushing centers back. He's a guy that commands double teams on passing downs from the edge. So Kentucky can get pretty creative with their stunt packages and their blitz packages. One of the games I really like to think of, think about trying to stop a dink and dunk offense. Last year's air raid team with Mississippi State and check down Charlie himself, Will Rogers. Well, that was one of the games where they had exotic blitz packages, bringing corners, bringing safeties. If you watch their third down defense last year, I think it'd be a lot of what they have in store, trying to get Mertz out of rhythm, assuming they can win first and second down.
All right, before we get before we get into more questions with Clark Brooks. Again, we're joined by Clark Brooks, On Three national college football analyst and stats guru. Hey, if you like what we're doing, Nick always gets on me, Clark, for not mentioning it. Like the video, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and we appreciate all the comments, even the ones from you, Chris Sorley. Yes. So, Nick, back to you, and Clark, again, we appreciate you coming by here.
Well, thank you for having me.
What have been your impressions of Austin Armstrong and his defense? I used to call him the 20-year-old defensive coordinator, but he joined the 30 club. He joined me in the 30 club right before the season.
Yeah, he's definitely a jubilant guy. He's definitely animated, and that's what you like to see. You want to have some fire in that position. So week one, it wasn't great, but since then we've seen them rebound very well. And of course, a lot of people have mentioned this now, but them being able to flip the numbers advantage on Tennessee 2 weeks ago cannot be ignored, my friends. So Tennessee, they love to maximize leverage and space with the super spread veer and shoot offense, whatever you want to freaking call it. But they really love stack sets to where they're really stressing the side to side latency of back enders. So when you're doing that, you can't really load the box. So if you're doing basic math, usually you can have 5 or 6 defenders, 5 offensive linemen, 2 in the backfield, 7 advantage offense. But carry after carry after carry, Florida won that battle. So when you're looking at Kentucky and you're seeing that they're not necessarily a consistent offense running the ball down the down, minus a few splash plays, that's a great advantage, I would say, having going into this game for Florida is just those box players. Cameron Johnson, Watson, those guys that have to command 2 people against 1 and free up those linebackers to make some free plays once those guys are occupying the guys up front. So I don't think Kentucky's necessarily has been as good as Tennessee up front, as consistent as Tennessee up front. So I definitely think that matchup advantage is going to go in. And of course, we saw at his press conference, he wants to mix in modern back end tactics like man match coverage, and be a little less deliberate, a little bit less cookie cutter on the back end. And since Leary, some of his interceptions, definitely not his fault, but Kentucky does have the worst turnover rate in the SEC entering this week. So I would definitely imagine an aggressive defense, a havoc-driven defense will definitely want to continue to disrupt Leary, who he's an average size. I'm 6'1", 230, and he's smaller than I am. So you can imagine this trying to disrupt him is definitely going to be part of the game plan.
And looking at when I hear that, those exotic blitzes, and you mentioned that Will Rogers Mississippi State game, looking at Florida's offensive line, I think they've been okay. I think he thought they were really good against Tennessee. I thought they were okay. The issue for me is that it's a group where you need to have some familiarity, and Florida is just playing different guys every week because you've had a center that's out. Last week, you had a couple boxing matches at the end of the Tennessee game that kept a couple of other guys out. How do you think Florida will look on offense? Will they be able to run against this Tennessee defense? And if Florida is forced to pass the ball, can they handle a blitz coming from safeties and linebackers and off the edge and cornerbacks?
Well, week 1 was a mess, and not having Kingsley absolutely was a difference maker. But getting, like you said, more continuity, that's just the big thing. Of course, that's one of the big year-over-year factors a lot of people like to look on if a team will stick or if they're going to regress or not, is how many guys are going to return, how many snaps have they had together, how are they going to gel? Because offensive line, like secondaries, is a unit link-based thing where you're only as good as your poorest person. So, if you have 4 80s and 1 69, where your offensive line's a 69, unfortunately.
Nice.
It's not nice. I was about to say it's not nice there. But Florida, I think they're trending upward, of course, because of how they're schematically, I think they're starting to call a little bit more things that fit their cup of tea. When you bring in a lot of size, and that was a very clear emphasis for them in the offseason, was bring in a lot of size, but you don't really see a lot of zone-based offenses do that. You see a little bit more nimble offensive linemen, smaller offensive linemen, more athletic offensive linemen, so you can reach those quicker edges around, the perimeter there. But after week 1, it looks like the off tackle has become, again, the lead look for this run game. And I think it's just because when Kingsley wasn't there, or just, trying to find that right front 5, they didn't know exactly what to lean on. And I don't think that was any accident that the run game was basically faded in week 1, when they definitely had an opportunity to be a little bit more balanced as the game prolonged. But I do think they're going to be able to hold up, just because how Kentucky is a little bit more prudent with their coverage, with their blitzes and their exotic pressures, their creepers. They're not necessarily someone who likes to mug the line of scrimmage a lot. They like I said, like sit back, show what is available, and trying to manipulate and disguise post snap, as opposed to be a little bit more proactive pre snap.
Throwing 7 different kinds of smoke from the Kentucky defense. Is there one stat, and we'll let you run. You got to get back to your Sunday night. Is there one stat that you found from either team, Florida or Kentucky, that you think, hey, I can hang my hat on this? This is who this team is. Even though we've only played 4 games, this is who they are.
I mean, I kind of hinted at it's the drop rate with Kentucky, and this was an issue with them last year. Of course, they had 2 dynamic young receivers, Dan Key and Barrion Brown. Of course, I don't have to remind you all, Dan Key caught that deep post pattern that basically decided the ball game last year. Well, he caught a deep contested touchdown last week against Vanderbilt, so he is a person who does show up on tape. But unfortunately, 13% of Leary's attempts were dropped. And when scouting him against his hardest opponents each of the last 2 years while he was at NC State, he was a consistent sufferer from double-digit drop rates. So unfortunately,
Oof.
while Kentucky has had a double-digit drop rate last year, that has just maintained itself over the first month of the season. So they leave plays on the field. And of course, that can be a major momentum killer. Of course, like I mentioned earlier, whether it was the getting stepped on or getting hit when thrown or whatever, they give opponents plenty of opportunities to let the Cats beat themselves. And just because of how the offensive line is underwhelmed and how Florida's front four, front seven, no matter how you want to categorize who's in the box, it's definitely going to be a big advantage for them entering this weekend, in my opinion.
Well, Clark, we appreciate you stopping by. That's Clark Brooks, National College Football Analyst for On3. You can find him on Twitter. Again, correct me if I get this wrong. Nick and I are both overcoming minor illnesses here, so forgive any mistakes. But I already forgot it. Hold on a second. I had it.
At SEC_StatCat. And of course, the website, www.secstatcat.com, where I chart every SEC offensive snap. I've been doing this since 2018, in addition to my On3 duties, which I've been doing the past year or so. I'm in charge of ranking our 550 most impactful college football players every week. So it requires a whole lot, but I love it. So I update the site as I chart each game. Be sure to check that throughout the week as I prepare you all for this upcoming week 5. But Keith, Nick, it was a pleasure. Thank you all so much for joining me.
All right. Thank you so much,
Thanks,
Clark.
Have a good one.
We got to get him out of here. He knows way too much. He makes us look bad. Great stuff.
Listen,
Clark there. Oh, my goodness.
Let smart people talk.
Absolutely. All right, Nick, back to the game from last night. And then we'll bring in Fletcher Westphal in a little bit, 4-star offensive tackle committee. He's telling me 740. So let's hope so. He is a great young guy. He'll be a great interview. But, with people, their own personal schedules kind of change a lot. But hopefully he's going to be able to join us. But, Nick, so who looked good last night? Obviously, the defense held Charlotte to, I think, 211 yards. Graham Mertz efficient again, threw a few balls high. Obviously, Ricky Pearsall went up and got one of them. Mm-hmm. Ricky Pearsall, that was the catch he made, the one-handed catch in traffic, getting hit. One of the great catches fans at the Swamp. I always want to say Florida Field, but Spurrier Field that they will ever see. Obviously, Trey Smack. You're a guy that loves kickers, Nick. I don't know why this guy wasn't starting the whole season. He now looks like he's an All-American out there. And but that's where I start with. Those are kind of the highlights to me. Who stood out for you? Are the same guys? Anybody we're missing? What?
Yeah, I mean, listen, Ricky Pearsall. We're going to start and end with that catch. I think the rest of the year, that might be the catch of the year. I saw somebody say it was better than Odell Beckham's catch because Odell didn't get hit. Just the body control. Let
me interrupt you. That wasn't just somebody. That was Jim Nagy, who I believe runs the recent Senior Bowl, who said that was better than OBJ's catch. So let you get back to your thoughts there.
I thought Graham Mertz has been steady Eddie the whole season. He was really good. I think he had his highest graded game by Pro Football Focus. Ricky was really good. I thought Jake Slaughter played well. And a guy who I didn't think has ever played poorly, but maybe just not at the level that we would have expected from Kingsley. I thought he played and filled in for Kingsley very well yesterday against Charlotte. Arlis Borningham gets his first touchdown. On defense, I really, really like Scooby Williams. And this is a player who I've said before, when I saw him bouncing from edge to linebacker to edge and then back to linebacker, I thought, man, I think they're trying to send this kid a message that he's not good enough and he needs to leave. That's wrong. That was wrong. He's played exceptionally this year. I think Kelby Collins, Scooby Williams, TJ Searcy, Caleb Banks. This is going to be a big game for Caleb Banks this week. Louisville kid. Spent a couple of years there. They have no love lost for Kentucky. He's going back up to the state of Kentucky to play his still rival. And then Princely Umamielen, I think, is a guy who I like a lot. Shamar James played well. Jordan Castell played well. I really like Florida's defense, and they might give up a big play or two. I think I said that before. Austin Armstrong is going to emphasize getting to the quarterback. Florida needs to do that at a higher clip. They need to force some more turnovers. But I really like Austin Armstrong. To the point where I'm like, hey, we need to enjoy Austin Armstrong while he's here because he'll probably be a head coach within the next 5 years, and like he won't be at Florida for very long. Like I think that highly of him.
Well, obviously our coworker, Zach Alberverdi, excuse me, I always pronounce that wrong. He did a big feature on Austin Armstrong, I think in August, and he talked to some of his college teammates, his college coach. Well, one of his college teammates is a guy named Cole Pinkston, who I worked with for a few years at covering Auburn for the Auburn On 3 site. And Cole was a younger guy on the team at, what's the college? Is it Faulkner? I always get them mixed up. Or Huntington. Huntington. Could you look that up for me? It was a school that Austin Armstrong played at in the Montgomery area. And he said, listen, this guy was like a coaching prodigy as a young guy. He didn't have all physical tools. He was playing at, Division II, Division III, but he understood the game. He was a coaching prodigy. So the last few years, in particular, when Austin Armstrong was coaching at Southern Miss, Cole, who I worked with, would constantly give me updates. Hey, man, you're not going to believe how well my guy's doing. He's just kicking tail. And then lo and behold, Nick Saban hires him during the offseason. All right. And then he doesn't last at Alabama long, and he's back. He's already down at Florida as the DC. And obviously we bring this up because people always want to know. I mean, youth, man. I mean, youth's great in recruiting, but what about, it seems like it's kind of like Nick, when you're on an airplane, you feel at ease when the pilot's like in his 50s or 60s because you're thinking that guy's probably been through a lot. He's seen a lot. You see a pilot that's like 27 and you're thinking, oh, dear God, let me make sure all my paperwork's in order before I get on this plane, And so that's kind of how you feel about coordinators. But to the older Florida fan, Nick, they remember Mike Shanahan being a 27-year-old offensive coordinator coming to Florida in 1980 and having great success with the Gators from 1980 to 83 when the program really took off. So probably not as many reservations for them, but he's young, he's energetic, he's a football mind, super sharp IQ. If you have a conversation with him, he's just rattling stuff off like this. There's so much in his head, and I agree with you, Nick. I'm going on and on here. He's been impressive so far. I mean, it's not every game is going to be perfect. Not every call is going to be perfect. And by the way, the guys calling the offensive plays for the other team, they're smart guys too, and they have good players too. But so far, I think, what kind of grade would you give Austin Armstrong? It's got to be a B+ or an A, doesn't it, Nick?
I'm giving whatever his initials, A. He's getting 3 A's for me. It's Austin Armstrong gets an A. Keith, he played at Huntington.
There we go.
2010 to 2013. Man,
so you're giving him an A. Is there anything you think you'd like to see more of from the defense, Nick? Any different kinds of looks? Is there somebody, a younger guy you think should play more? Is there somebody you'd really like to see turned loose? Excuse me. And who's the biggest surprise on the defense so far? To me, it's got to be Jordan Castile. Jordan
Castile. He's a big surprise. I haven't been. I was on the Miguel Mitchell hype train early. I think he kind of turns into a roadblock or a speed bump, less than a roadblock, a speed bump. Doesn't look like he's super interested in tackling. And I love Bryce Thornton. Like, listen, I think if Bryce Thornton wasn't 5'10", 180 pounds, then he probably would have been a 5-star. Like, that's the kind of athleticism and talent that he has and that he can bring to the table. Now you're going to be asking, now am I saying you should be starting 2 true freshman safeties at a position where you need to know everything? That Billy talks about 4D players. You need kind of a 4D player there. I don't know that I would want to do that, but I think Bryce Thornton's a guy that I'd like to maybe see more of. Jakeem Jackson, I'd like to see a little bit more of him. And I don't know. I think Florida's defense is, I don't know that they're going to have anyone like Jordan Castile will be an all SEC freshman. I don't know if they have any all first team SEC guys, but they have depth and they rotate guys in, whether it's Scooby and Shamar or it's the 4, 5, 6 guys that they have on the defensive line. I think that Florida's defense plays really good as a whole.
Right. Before we continue on here, if you like what we're doing, like the video, subscribe to our YouTube channel, leave a comment. And by the way, I got to apologize to somebody, Nick. I'm trying to add comments so everybody can get up on the screen at least once. And somebody was, I guess, making fun of me and said, is Keith asking a question? And I tried to like it, and I think I put him in timeout, and I have no idea how to get him in timeout. No, I am not upset. I'm long-winded. I mean, give me, what do you want me to tell you? I don't, I talk myself into holes sometimes and don't know how to get out. But Nick, we talked about the good. I mean, we're actually being more positive than maybe people thought we'd be, but it wasn't all good last night. What do you make of these lack of third down conversions? Now, it's 2 games where that's been an issue, Utah and last night. Is it I mean, I don't think it's play calling, but I know a lot of people do. Is it play calling?
they were so good the week before on third down.
Unbelievable.
Like sensational the week before. To me, the issues are red zone. I went and looked at Billy and his red zone offense got worse all 4 years. At UL, it got worse than it did his 4th year at UL. His first year at UF was worse than any of the years at UL. Florida did drop a little bit in terms of touchdown percentage because they kicked 4 red zone field goals last year. But I don't know that Billy Napier is a great play caller. But like Florida's winning football games. I think there's just a lot of people that are too mad about a 3-1 football team right now. Like Florida lost to Utah, who has played without their number 1 quarterback, number 1 tight end, without a bunch of players, and they're 4-0 and number 10 or 9 in the country. Like the one loss Florida has is to a really, really good team on the road.
All right, we're going to get Nick to stop talking, and I'm going to stop talking too. We actually have an important guest, Fletcher Westphal. Can you hear us?
I can hear you.
All right. Well, Fletcher is a 4-star offensive tackle commit for the Florida Gators. He's from Leesburg, Virginia. I think that's northwest of D.C., And Fletcher, I'm going to get you to – I always kid people about writing about how big offensive linemen are, and you're really big. So let's get your measurables. What's your current height and weight right now?
So I'm 6'8", 6'8.5", depending on, I guess, who you're asking. And I'm weigh 330. Weighed myself right after our game, actually.
That's an SEC body, Nick. I think that's an SEC frame. Fletcher,
real quick, Keith. I think I saw your dad post something on Twitter. How many plays did you play yesterday? Or Friday, sorry?
I don't know, like 100 plus.
Oh, my God.
That's wild. I would get tired covering a game watching you play 100 plus, let alone having to play them.
Nick, the first time I met Fletcher was after the Grill in the Ville event in Gainesville. And again, I should point out Fletcher's the number 16 offensive tackle recruit in the country. Probably isn't happy with that ranking. By the way, nobody's ever happy with the ranking except the kid that's number 1 in the country. But I met Fletcher in Gainesville, and I was talking to him. I was standing right next to him with 3 or 4 other reporters, and I looked down, and his shoe was massive. And I just said, let's stop the interview. I said, I got to know what's your shoe size, but I already forgot, Fletcher. So give me your shoe size and your hand size, because these are actually important stats for offensive tackles. So shoe size and hand size, what do you got?
So I have a size 18 foot, right?
Like Nick. Okay.
And so my hand flexibility is not that good. I have a huge palm, but my like hand span thing like this is only 10.
Mine. We might have similar hands. Now, are you a sneakerhead guy? I'm a sneakerhead. I can't imagine it's easy to get like new Jordans in an 18.
Yeah, no, that's not easy at all. There was like
it starts becoming easy next year, though.
Yeah, I hope it does. But there was a pair of like cool gray Jordan 4s that I wanted to buy, and and like every other size they're $300, and my size they're $500, and it's I can't do that. I have 3 pairs of Jordans, 2 pairs of Jordan 4s, 1 pair of Jordan 3s, and I mean that alone has already broken the bank.
Yeah. But it's a tough spot to be in a size 18 shoe. It's tough to love sneakers, and then you're gonna get taxed. I think they make like 7 every release, 7 size 18. So you're paying the premium.
Fletcher, we're going to talk a little bit about football, but we also want people to get to know you a little bit. And this is good for you in this NIL world. The more accessible people think you are, the more likable you are. Hey, it only benefits you. So, but first of all, we do appreciate you coming by. But there was a great video that your mother, I believe, posted on Twitter, the app formerly known as Twitter, after the Tennessee game. It was all of y'all singing "Won't Back Down" in the stadium. And it was a really neat perspective. I mean, to be honest with you, there's not a bad video of that out there. Wherever somebody's sitting, it looks cool. But there was you to her right, your father, I believe, to her left, and that guy, DJ Lagway, the 5-star quarterback, behind her. And it was just a really cool moment. So I got to ask you, Tom Petty sings that song. He's been gone for a few years now. It seems like it's even catching on with recruits, and, rock and roll is sort of not what it used to be, right? What do you think of that whole moment and that scene and just singing that song? Are you starting to like it? I mean, you tell me about it. Just describe that moment where you're all together.
So I mean, I think it was surreal. Just 90,000 people in that stadium, all singing "I Won't Back Down." I mean, it was absolutely unreal. And I mean, actually, I already do like the song. I'm one of those people who are like I can listen to absolutely anything besides country music. But I can listen to like anything and I'll enjoy it. So like, we had a game that got rescheduled from Friday to Saturday and there was no buses. So we all had to drive on our own. And so me and my other captain, Eli Chappell, we're driving. And when we pull in, we have "I Won't Back Down" playing full volume in the car as we're pulling in. So, I mean, I definitely enjoyed the song.
Well, that's good because John Wilcox is telling me it's the lyrics, knucklehead. He's talking to me, by the way, Fletcher, not you. But hey, Fletcher, as a commit, you guys have really bonded, it seems like, the Florida commits. I just want to know, have you gone through and looked at film of the guys you're going to be playing with, and specifically a guy like DJ Lagway, who you're going to be blocking for the next few years? If you have watched his video, what do you think? I mean, again, we're just casual fans, okay? You're going to be playing with him. You have to know his tendencies. You got to know which way he rolls out better to. You got to know his personality, his cadence. You're going to have to know a lot of things. What have you seen from him that really sticks out to you?
Well, I mean, DJ, he's like really high, I guess, like media attention, right? And it's not too hard to find anything about him. I mean, from what I see with him in his high school, I mean, he's just dominating the entire time. I mean, to me, that's just what it looks like. It looks like me versus, like a 6 foot, 180-pound DM. That's him versus all 11 on the other team. I mean, he's throwing for a crazy amount of yards. He's rushing for a crazy amount of yards every game. It's like light work to him.
All right, Fletcher, I've got a couple more, and Nick's probably going to want to ask some too, and we'll let you get back to your regularly scheduled Sunday night. But, every elite athlete thinks they're going to be ready to play as a freshman. It's hard, though. It's hard. For you to have an opportunity to be on the field next year, and you're going to be your own harshest critic. You know your game better than anybody. You know your pluses and minuses. What do you think you have to work on the most between now and next, first week of September to be a guy that can contribute potentially in year one?
So, I mean, I know one thing, like one of my huge weaknesses is definitely my pass game. But what I kind of believe is going to happen is like during spring ball and when everyone's together, we're actually you're going against other, I guess, SEC players, other players on Florida, right? When you're going against those other guys, you'll quickly realize what your major deficiencies are, and that'll be kind of when I really realize, hey, this is what I need to sit down, hunker down, and what I really need to work on, what I need to improve my craft on.
All right, and the last couple of things for me, when you were in the stadium behind me there for the Florida-Tennessee game, have you ever been anywhere that was that electric for a game in your life? Have you ever experienced anything like that before?
So, because I've been on so many visits, so twice. The first time ever was a Penn State whiteout. It was Penn State versus Auburn. I think it was the 7th most populated Penn State game ever. I mean, that was crazy. There was a bunch of like celebrities at the game, all that. And then the second one was the Georgia-Tennessee game last year when Tennessee had taken the number 1 spot from Georgia. That was a crazy game.
All right, Nick, what you got?
Was that in Neyland?
No, that was
in Athens.
Yeah, that was in Athens.
Okay, I've never been to Athens. I don't know if I'll be able to get to. You're never going to go to Athens. Now you're going to Florida. You'll be in Jacksonville. That's a really cool experience there too. But I was going to ask about that. What have been some of your? We talked about Tom Petty, but you've been elsewhere. What are some of you talked about the Penn State whiteout? What are some other cool traditions and things you've seen throughout the recruiting process?
I mean, like really thinking about it, I'm like, funny enough, nothing's really coming to mind, right?
Mm-hmm.
The Tom Petty, I Won't Back Down, fourth quarter song, that right there, it sticks in your head. I don't think I'll ever forget that experience. Just, I mean, off the dome, I genuinely can't think of anything besides, some places just being obnoxiously loud.
Yeah. The Penn State whiteout looks awesome. I've never been there in person, but they just did it for Iowa. last Saturday, and like nobody misses their homework assignment in College Station. That's for sure.
Fletcher, when somebody says, and again, you're not in the Southeast, you're up in DC. When somebody says, "Hey, why did you commit to Florida? Why Florida?" Anybody could ask you that, a recruit, a parent, a teacher, a coach. What do you tell them? It's different for every kid.
So for me, I just say they're my everything school. So, I was a highly recruited kid. I had 40 plus offers, and I had taken 88 total visits before I committed to, I believe, 44 different schools. And it's I know I made the right decision. To me, Florida, they had the best of every world at the best level you could get it. Right, they're in the best conference. I believe they have some of the best coaches. Right. I mean, that's just scratching the surface. What Coach Napier's done is it's amazing.
What do you think? What is your real quick, Keith? What's your opinion? Florida's one of the only schools that has 2 offensive line coaches. How was that presented to you, and did that have an impact on your decision?
Yeah, I think it most definitely did. I wouldn't say the fact that they had the 2 on, or it is the fact that they have the 2 online coaches, but it's the fact that I went to a spring visit and I saw how Coach Stape and Coach Sale, how they were working together, whether it be in the film room or whether they're on the field training their guys. I saw how they work together and how things were really broken down. And I just, to me, that was like, hey, I'm going to be able to get developed here.
Mm-hmm.
Fletcher, you mentioned that Florida's got among the best coaches, one of the best schools. It was all of that. How would you rate the reporters covering the Florida program? We assume you have them number 1 as well. I mean, that's kind of the vibe I'm getting, that you would put us above everybody else. Am I reading that correctly?
Yeah, I mean, definitely the reporters for Florida have been on top of, I guess, reporting.
Fletcher, I'll do anything for a pat on the back. Believe me, it's pretty pathetic.
This guy.
Nick, you got any more questions for Fletcher?
No. I think it's. Any travel plans, the rest of the season, and how's your high school season going as well?
High school season's going amazing. We're 5-0 right now. Going into our bye week, actually. So I have Monday off. I'll be in tomorrow, all that. And next time I'll be coming back down. November 3rd for the Florida Arkansas game. I'm going to see those blackout jerseys, and I mean that's kind of it.
Two more quick ones, real fast. Just thoughts about Billy Napier. What do you like most about Billy Napier?
So I like the experience that he has, right? He was at Clemson for 9 years. I don't know how long he was at Alabama for, but he was there. To me, he has a treasure trove of information from all these other top programs, and he brings it into Florida. And it's not one of those coaches who's been at these top programs and says they have the information, but they don't actively use it. I believe he's using the information that he's kind of acquired. So Clemson was my close kind of number 2 pick, and with me it was, they have all their life after football, develop life development stuff, not football player development stuff, and Coach Napier has brought that to Florida, but I would say it's so much more productive than Clemson's, just in terms of the amount of projects that they've done in the last since the beginning of the year compared to Clemson, right? They've been a lot more productive, and I think the fact that he's brought the best of the football world and then the best of the life after football world together, I think that's huge part of it.
I thought we lost you there for a second, Fletcher. Hey, last thing, your parents, this is a family decision. You love Florida. They love Florida. In fact, they're moving to Florida. Your father's told me he's been home shopping, I think, in the Tampa, St. Pete area. What is it so much that they loved about Florida? We know what you love about Florida now. You explained that beautifully. What about them?
So for them, out of my top 5, they had the number 1 education. They're also huge on that life after football. And so I had all of the top education schools out of out of college football. I had Duke, I had Northwestern, I had Stanford, and it, like I really didn't actually. So Duke, after with I like Duke's new coaching staff, but like their old coaching staff, I did not like at all. Right? It's it's just Florida has the best of everything. Right, out of my top schools. That's just kind of, they had the best of everything, and my parents kind of agreed with that. They were secretly praying that I went to Florida. If I'd gone to Arkansas and they were moving to Arkansas, they would have, like, a tear would have gone down their face. That's kind of, they were just secretly praying for Florida.
Well, listen, man, you did fantastic, Nick. I think you probably agree with me. Great stuff from 4-star offensive tackle Fletcher Westphal. You're welcome on the show anytime. I mean, if you got into Stanford, Northwestern, and Florida, you're a pretty smart guy. You're probably going to
smartest guy on the call, right?
Yeah,
now.
absolutely. And when Nick and I may be looking for jobs in about 10, 15 years. So just let us know where we need to send our resumes and all that stuff. But Fletcher, thank you so much. Please tell your parents we said hi. We appreciate it. You come back anytime, man, and we'll see you again at the Swamp later this season. Okay.
Definitely.
Yeah. Take care, man.
Yes, sir, you too.
Well, Nick, I mean, he did about as well as you can do in an interview.
Yeah, really
he's
impressive young man.
Yeah, he's smoother on camera than you and I are, which isn't saying much. But yeah, smart guy, ultra talented, and he's got the piece of clay. I mean, he's really, you start talking about players you're looking for. You really want him to fit your culture. You want him to have the body. You want him to have the skill set. You want to know the guy's not going to get in trouble. That's the guy that checks a lot of boxes, Nick. He really does.
Yeah, I mean, listen, Florida Stape and Sale have a type, and 6'8", 330 in high school. Certainly fits their type.
All right, well, let's just we'll wrap up here shortly. But Nick, just your thoughts after 4 weeks of the season. I think if you would have said, "Hey, look, Florida's going to be 3-1,"
yeah.
Forget about 3-1 after 4 games coming off of the win. Yeah, absolutely. Now, would you have liked to beat Utah too? But of course, no kidding, no duh. But 3-1 is not bad. And this, you're breaking the season into thirds. If you went 3-1 in all 3 thirds, you'd win 9 games. Obviously, that wouldn't be terrible. Just general thoughts, Nick, going into this next week. How does Florida? We'll get more into the game later in the week. You and Zach Albaverdi, but. What is Florida, just off the top of your head, going to have to do this week to be in this game and beat Kentucky?
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see if Florida can run the ball. I said Florida's going to run the ball in Tennessee. I think I said 200. I was wrong. They ran for 183. Sorry. But Tennessee fans called me a homer because I thought they'd run on Tennessee. Can Florida run on Kentucky? I've been called a homer. I've been called negative.
You've been called worse than a homer, if we're going to be honest. And that's just in the Gators online group text. But,
can Florida run on Kentucky? And if you can't, can you pass? Which when I hear Clark start talking about, exotic blitz packages or even just stunts and stuff, can you keep Graham Mertz upright? Like, Graham Mertz is now showing me on a weekly basis that he's tough as boot leather. Stop making him show it. If you're his offensive lineman, stop making Graham show us how tough he is, and just protect him and give him some time. I think you get Eugene Wilson back this week. That's huge. Eugene Wilson is going to be a player for the next 3 to 4 years. That's going to be an impact anytime he's healthy and available to play. And then I think Florida can come in with a balanced running attack. And like I said, against Tennessee, if the running attack takes a little while to get through, don't go away from it like you did. You went away from it too early against Utah. This is a winnable game for Florida. Another question I'm going to have, what are you doing procedurally? I can't even – the procedure on saying that word is tough for me, Keith. That's 10.
Very eloquent, yes. Yeah.
10 men on the field there. What do you do in another hostile environment? You failed. Miserably failed your – how'd you handle the road game in your first test at Utah? F's across the board. Now you learn from that. You make corrections. You play music. Do what you need to do. You run through things as much as you can this week. Florida won't beat Kentucky in Lexington if they go out and have all the procedural penalties they had last or in the season opener against Utah. That's just they're not a good enough football team to overcome shooting themselves in the foot over and over again like that. There's not many teams, in the country that are.
Play better on third down, be efficient in the red zone, continue to play solid defense, improve special teams. You're making kicks now. If you can do these things, you should be in the game. You should be. Yep. It should be a winnable game. But it can be a deceptively difficult place to play when if you have a really good team, you're probably going to go up there and win most of the time, right? But historically, Florida had that 30-game win streak or whatever it was over Kentucky. But people forget that before that, they struggled in Lexington for many years. And now the schedule was a little different back then, Nick. They used to have to go up there late in the year. They always had to play up there when it was cold, so you don't have to deal with that anymore. But this Florida team, if we see the Florida team that plays with the energy on defense and the precision on offense that we saw in the first half against Tennessee, they got a real good shot to come out of Lexington with a win. But it won't be easy. But, hey, you win that game, Nick, you're 4-1, and all of a sudden, man, gosh, you're starting to think, you've got South Carolina on the road, you got Vanderbilt at home, Arkansas at home, Missouri on the road. They're all winnable games. All winnable games. And then you roll the dice with Georgia and Jacksonville and LSU on the road and Florida State at home. But they're going to have to obviously play better than they did last week. But I think most people believe that was that letdown game that is a natural thing to happen. You wish it didn't happen, but it happens so much that it almost sometimes seems like it's unavoidable no matter what you do. But a 22-7 win for the Florida Gators on Saturday night at the Swamp. Kentucky this week on the road. Nick will be there. Zach Alberverdi will be there. We're going to have programming all week. That game, I believe, is a noon kickoff. So at least we all won't be up till 2 a.m. next weekend. But we hope everybody has a safe week. Make sure you like this, leave a comment, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and go to GatorsOnline.com. $1 gets you 1 month right now for unlimited team intel, team insight, recruiting scoop, all that stuff, plus the best message board community in Gator Nation. So we appreciate it. For Keith, I'm Keith. For Nick, the guy next to me, for Nick Delatorre, I'm Keith Niebuhr. Gators Online extraordinaire, Nick. Gators Online average writer, Keith. We'll do it again. We'll do it again soon. We appreciate everybody stopping by. Thank you so much. Have a great week, guys.